Picture the single most recognizable hotel on Earth, a sail-shaped tower rising from the waters of the Arabian Gulf, a building so famous that its silhouette alone can identify an entire city. For more than 26 years, that building has represented one thing and one thing only: Dubai. Now imagine those doors closing. Not for a weekend, not for a routine inspection, and not because of a temporary technical problem. Closed completely for the first time in its history, that is no longer speculation. It is happening right now. The Burj Al Arab, one of the most famous hotels ever built, is preparing for an 18-month closure. Officially, the reason is simple: a major renovation designed to modernize the property and prepare it for the future. On the surface, that explanation sounds perfectly reasonable. Luxury hotels around the world undergo upgrades all the time. Yet timing matters, and the timing of this closure has raised questions that go far beyond interior design or routine maintenance. The announcement comes at a moment when Dubai is facing challenges that would have seemed almost unthinkable just a few years ago. Tourism growth has slowed, luxury spending is under pressure, several major attractions have experienced disruptions, and regional instability has introduced a level of uncertainty that the city has spent decades trying to distance itself from. Viewed in isolation, the Burj Al Arab's closure looks like an ordinary business decision. Viewed alongside everything else happening across the city, it begins to feel like part of a much larger story. That is what makes this situation so fascinating. The Burj Al Arab is more than a hotel. For over 2 decades, it has functioned as the visual centerpiece of Dubai's global identity. It appears in travel advertisements, tourism campaigns, documentaries, magazines, and social media posts seen by millions of people around the world. For many travelers, seeing that sail-shaped silhouette is almost the same thing as seeing Dubai itself. Few buildings on Earth have become so closely connected to the image of an entire city. Naturally, that raises an uncomfortable question. What happens when the landmark that helped define a city suddenly goes dark? The answer leads far beyond a single hotel. It takes us to a fountain that stopped performing, an observation wheel that stopped turning, theme parks that fell silent, and shopping destinations that once attracted record-breaking crowds but are now facing a very different reality. Individually, each of these stories has its own explanation. Together, they reveal a pattern that is becoming increasingly difficult to ignore. Today, we are going to examine exactly why the Burj Al Arab is closing, what the official explanation tells us, what it leaves unsaid, and why this story may reveal something much bigger about the future of one of the world's. To understand why this closure matters, you first have to understand what the Burj Al Arab actually represents. Most people think of it as a luxury hotel. In reality, it has always been something much bigger than that. When the building opened in December 1999 on its own man-made island off the Jumeirah coastline, it was never designed to compete with ordinary hotels. Its purpose was to make a statement. Rising more than 320 meters above the Arabian Gulf, its sail-shaped design immediately separated it from every other structure in the region. Dubai wasn't simply building another place for tourists to stay. It was creating a global icon. Part of that image was fueled by a description that quickly spread around the world. A British journalist famously referred to the Burj Al Arab as a 7-star hotel. No official hotel rating system has ever recognized such a category, but the phrase captured the public imagination and refused to disappear. The label stuck because it seemed to fit. Everything about the property was designed to feel larger than life. Guests were greeted with towering atriums, gold leaf interiors, lavish marble finishes, private butler service, and chauffeur-driven Rolls-Royce transfers. Staying there was less about booking a room and more about participating in a carefully crafted performance of luxury. The numbers alone helped build the legend. The hotel contained just over 200 duplex suites, each offering panoramic views of the sea. Unlike many luxury properties that rely on sheer size, the Burj Al Arab focused on exclusivity. Every detail was intended to communicate the same message. This was a place operating in a category of its own. Visitors weren't simply purchasing accommodation. They were buying access to an experience designed to symbolize success, wealth, and prestige. Over time, the building evolved into something far more valuable than a hotel. It became one of the most powerful branding tools any city has ever possessed. Show someone the outline of the Eiffel Tower and they think of Paris. Show them the Statue of Liberty and they think of New York. Show them the sail-shaped silhouette of the Burj Al Arab and they think of Dubai. That level of recognition is incredibly rare. For more than 2 decades, the structure appeared in advertisements, television programs, travel brochures, documentaries, and social media content viewed across every continent. Long before many people could point to Dubai on a map, they recognized the building that represented it. That transformation changed the role of the Burj Al Arab entirely. It was no longer judged only by occupancy rates or revenue figures. Instead, it became a symbol of the city's ambition. Every image of the hotel reinforced the idea that Dubai could build things bigger, bolder, and more spectacular than anyone expected. It helped sell a vision of a city that seemed permanently connected to growth, luxury, and success. For years, that vision appeared unstoppable. Which is exactly why news of its closure generated such a strong reaction. Buildings like this are not supposed to disappear from the skyline, even temporarily. They are meant to be permanent fixtures, the landmarks that remain unchanged while everything around them evolves. When a place so closely tied to a city's identity suddenly shuts its doors, people naturally begin asking questions that go far beyond construction. Now this is where the story becomes more complicated, because the official explanation and the broader context surrounding it tell 2 very different stories. According to the hotel's management, the closure is part of a long-planned 18-month refurbishment project. The renovation is expected to modernize key areas of the property, upgrade guest experiences, and ensure that the Burj Al Arab remains competitive in the ultra-luxury market for years to come. Existing guests have been relocated to nearby properties, and company statements have emphasized that the project is an investment in the future rather than a response to any immediate challenge. On its own, that explanation makes perfect sense. The building first opened in 1999. More than 2 decades of continuous operation can place enormous pressure on even the most carefully maintained luxury property. Hotels at the highest end of the market regularly undergo extensive renovations to keep up with changing customer expectations. New competitors emerge, design trends evolve, and guest preferences shift over time. From that perspective, the closure appears to be nothing more than a routine business decision. Context, however, has a way of changing how people interpret events. During the months surrounding the announcement, Dubai's tourism and hospitality industries were already facing growing pressure. Reports began emerging of declining visitor numbers in certain segments of the luxury travel market. Regional tensions were dominating international headlines. Several governments issued travel advisories urging citizens to exercise caution when visiting parts of the Gulf region. Airlines adjusted routes, tourism operators revised forecasts, and businesses dependent on international visitors started preparing for a more uncertain environment. Under those circumstances, the closure of the city's most recognizable hotel naturally attracted far more attention than a standard renovation normally would. People began asking whether timing alone could explain the decision. Was this simply a hotel upgrading its facilities after years of non-stop operation, or was management taking advantage of a quieter period to temporarily step away from the spotlight? The official statements never suggested anything beyond renovation plans, yet public speculation continued to grow because the announcement arrived at a moment when confidence in the wider tourism market was already being tested. The reality is that both explanations can exist at the same time. A building may genuinely require modernization while also benefiting from a temporary closure during a challenging period for travel demand. Businesses often make decisions based on multiple factors rather than a single cause. That possibility makes the situation far more nuanced than the simple headlines suggest. The question is not necessarily whether the renovation is real. The question is whether the renovation alone explains why this particular moment was chosen. What makes this issue especially significant is the role the Burj Al Arab plays in the public imagination. Ordinary hotels close for renovations without attracting international attention. This hotel does not enjoy that luxury. Every decision connected to it is viewed through the lens of what it represents. For years, the building helped project an image of stability, confidence, and uninterrupted growth. As a result, even a temporary closure can trigger discussions that extend far beyond hospitality or architecture. Once those discussions begin, they rarely remain focused on a single landmark. Attention starts shifting toward everything else happening in the city. people begin looking for additional signs, additional disruptions, and additional examples that might support the idea that something larger is taking place. That is exactly what happened here. As observers looked beyond the Burj Al Arab, they discovered that several of Dubai's most recognizable attractions had also experienced closures, interruptions, or periods of unusual silence. What initially appeared to be an isolated event suddenly looked like part of a much broader pattern. For the first place, many people noticed that something felt different was not a hotel, it was a fountain. For years, the Dubai Fountain was one of the city's most popular attractions. Located at the base of the Burj Khalifa and stretching across a massive artificial lake, it delivered nightly performances that combined water, music, and light on a scale few places in the world could match. Tourists packed the surrounding walkways every evening, phones raised in the air, waiting for the next show to begin. Unlike many of Dubai's luxury experiences, this attraction was available to everyone. You didn't need a reservation, a luxury suite, or a premium ticket. All you had to do was show up. That accessibility helped turn the fountain into something special. Millions of visitors experienced it every year, and for many travelers it became one of their strongest memories of Dubai. Travel videos featured it, social media influencers filmed it, tourism campaigns highlighted it. Over time, the fountain became more than a public attraction. It became part of the city's identity, a symbol of the spectacle that Dubai promised to every visitor. Then the music stopped. Officials announced that the fountain would undergo extensive maintenance and structural upgrades. Years of constant operation had reportedly taken their toll on the system. Repairs were needed, and sections of the attraction would be temporarily shut down while crews carried out the work. On paper, the explanation was completely reasonable. Large infrastructure projects require maintenance. Mechanical systems wear out. Even world-famous attractions eventually need repairs. Yet the images that followed were difficult to ignore. The lake was drained. Construction barriers appeared. Areas that had once been crowded with visitors suddenly looked unfamiliar. For the first time in years, one of Dubai's most recognizable gathering places sat quiet. People who had visited the city expecting to witness the famous performances found empty viewing areas instead. The contrast was striking because so much of Dubai's reputation has been built on the idea of constant activity and non-stop entertainment. Eventually, the fountain returned to operation, but the story didn't end there. Additional renovation phases were announced, creating further interruptions and extending the period of uncertainty surrounding one of the city's most beloved attractions. Individually, none of these decisions seemed alarming. Infrastructure requires upkeep, and large-scale engineering projects are rarely simple. The problem was not the maintenance itself. The problem was perception. For years, the Dubai Fountain represented continuity. Visitors expected it to be there, performing every night just as it always had. When something that familiar suddenly disappears, even temporarily, people begin looking at other landmarks differently. Confidence is built through consistency, and consistency becomes noticeable only when it is interrupted. The fountain's silence may have been temporary, but it planted a question in the minds of many observers. If one of the city's most reliable attractions could go dark, what else might be more fragile than it appears? That question became even harder to ignore when attention shifted away from downtown Dubai and toward another ambitious project that was once expected to transform the city's tourism industry. Unlike the fountain, this wasn't an attraction that had operated successfully for decades. It was a billion-dollar vision that struggled almost from the moment it opened.